Hi guys, today I'd like to talk about the story and directing challenges facing the Russo brothers in the production of the Infinity Wars movies. I've broken this problem down to three sections. Firstly, the location of the Infinity Stones. Secondly, the powers of the Infinity Stones. And thirdly, the sheer number of characters that are going to be in this movie. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the first issue is the location of the stones. There is currently a huge amount of space between each of the Infinity Stones as we currently understand it. And how this equates into a movie is it adds on time. The storyline can become stretched as the directors are given a choice as to whether to incorporate or give significance to these moments of transition, i.e. going from one place to another. This is a key question for the Russo brothers. Do we need to follow every single movement of every single character? I would guess that's not going to happen. The other problem is that with different locations means different people, i.e. cultures, behaviours, and this makes there to be a need for the audience to be eased into these appropriately without feeling jumped around. This is where Marvel benefit from having more movies and more background from individual franchises as well as their collective Avengers product. So the trick here is to keep the geography big scale but keeping the story narrow and simply allowing the interactions between characters to be the focus of the movie, which I think is what was going to be the plan. It has been the plan thus far for Marvel, but this is the most challenging Marvel movie thus far. The second point to discuss is the powers of the stones themselves. As some may be advantageous to progressing the storyline and setting the pacing of the movie, others are certainly not, such as the reality stone, where rewriting reality redefines what an obstacle is. So how do the directors and the story writers stop the audience from raising these questions about this concept? Well, firstly, Thanos could get it last, minimising the amount of the story which could be impacted upon. Secondly, the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers can actually use it as a weapon against Thanos. Or thirdly, they could expressly state its limits in its uses from the outset. For example, it can not rewrite reality whilst it's in the presence of the space and time zones. It starts to encroach on their territory and their powers. So these are a few ways to minimise this issue, but the problems don't stop there. And this is because the powers of the time stone, because what is a threat if you can turn back time to a point where it wasn't one? It's a common issue for movies dealing with time travel, but to minimise its impact, we have had some limitations of the time stone introduced to us in the Doctor Strange movie. Well, obviously with the discussion of time loops and affecting natural law, and I can't help thinking this is going to come into the Infinity Wars movie in some capacity in order to limit the powers of Thanos. In fact, could he actually be tricked into misusing the Infinity Stone and trapping himself in some sort of paradox which he didn't intend, as well as it could be used as a weapon against Thanos? One other point of discussion is actually in the Avengers Assemble animated series that's been out lately, in Season 2, they had quite an interesting idea in actually combating Thanos' use of the Time Stone. He aged the Avengers thousands of years, but in fact that actually made Thor more powerful. And I think Thor's going to be quite key in this movie as well, but that actually made Thor more powerful and it forced Thanos to return the Avengers back to normal and reverse time, reverse that effect, which is quite interesting and something they could explore again here. The powers of the gems are going to be key in this movie, and how the Russo brothers tackle their individual powers and the possible storyline and audience questions that they're going to have to address are going to be important for the success of this movie. The final problem facing the Russo brothers is the sheer number of characters that are going to be appearing in the story. This causes issues like, is there going to be enough screen time for them all? Will there be enough room for character development? Because we want these characters to keep their integrity. We may not get enough space and time for character growth, but we don't want them to resort to just making jokes. That's not what they're there for. So I think ultimately Marvel do benefit from having made so many previous movies where a lot of these characters are far more established, have their own little sphere of influence, and then these Avengers movies is just about them coming together and just beating a bad guy for the most part. But because there are so many, I think this is quite a unique issue, and for me, I'd say they should focus on the old Avengers, the ones from the original Avengers Assemble movie, or even keep it narrower and focus on what many people are calling the Avengers Trinity of Thor, Captain America and Iron Man. This will allow them to focus the story, focus on, I think, the end of their character arcs, and everyone else just sort of chips in on it, and it provides quite a nice balance. And other characters don't necessarily need to get lost in their own little story when there's so much going on. And I think this would be quite a good way, a nice rounded way, to not only bring those original Avengers stories to an end, but to make the other characters relevant without them feeling too arbitrary or insignificant. So that's all I have, guys. Thank you for listening. I hope to be voicing my opinion again, so please subscribe, set up an alert, and definitely leave your opinion in the comments below. And I hope you're here again next time.